Logan Paul, Justin Bieber, PewDiePie, One Direction. All these people seem to have these fans, not normal fans, but these people for whom they're an idol, incapable of any wrongdoing. These fanboys and fangirls will fervently deny any wrongdoing done by said personality, and will basically ignore facts and logic due to emotional attachment, and possibly, as we will get into later, a fragile state of mind. The presence of these type of fans, for conciseness, I'll call them fawns, are a problem for multiple reasons. Not only do they create a sense of egoism and entitlement in their idols, they also give way too much leeway to them. There were people defending what Logan Paul did, and this means that he might not learn as much as from his mistake and might not even apologize and try to fix it. He did in this case due to backlash from others, but his fawns definitely made that process much more difficult and complicated than it had to be. This also happens on the other side, where people will desperately try to paint a person as if they are irredeemably bad. Take EA. They have done and are doing a lot of crappy things, and I do think that they're a bad anti-consumer company. However, Origin Access is a decent deal, but many people will deny this because EA. These people radicalize the conflict and destroy any chance of a nuanced understanding of the subject at hand, since the only two views we hear are that X is perfect and flawless, or that X is terrible and should be destroyed at all costs. We can see this in bigger issues as well, for example, politics, where everyone is allegedly an SJW far-left Tumblrina, or a racist, sexist, blankist, alt-right white supremacist. The main things I want to talk about here is the psyche behind these fawns. Are there any similarities in these types of people, in fawns, or those who are being fawned upon? What drives them into this mindless worship of someone? Is there anything we should look for in ourselves to avoid this behavior? And how do we talk and get through to these people, most importantly? When we look at fawns, a lot of us might think of that stereotype of just some kid, and while not all fawns are children, a lot of them are at least young, and maybe this is because it makes them more easily manipulative, because they don't have as much education about topics like history and economics, and kids are stupid. But we also see that fawns frequently show bias and fallacy in their reasoning, sometimes being downright hypocritical. This often happens when you want something to be right, where the point where you'll ignore sound logic and pardon falsities in order to contribute to your story. This can happen even if we're educated about these biases and fallacies. Emotion is a strong influencer. We also see that they can get very, very angry even when everyone else is just calm. They often are the ones who raise the volume and dissent in the room, and this is probably because they feel attacked if their idol is attacked, and they're very emotional about that. We also see that they don't actually watch many other people's content. They obviously primarily watch the content of their personality. Did many of your friends have other opinions about it? Like you mentioned your friend who preferred the PC, right? So did you talk with many others about that while you were a fanboy, or were you feeling uncomfortable talking with them?
No, I never really felt uncomfortable. I've in the group, that little friends group that I had in high school, I was the most, I guess I was the dominant one, the one who spoke his mind, and everyone just kind of listened even if they didn't agree. Most of my other friends were submissive, and so when it came to something like that, if they had an opinion that challenged mine, I would pretty much just shoot it down without even realizing that maybe it might be valid, and they would just let it happen, and that's another thing you'll find in a lot of fanboys.
Finally, no one takes fawns seriously. They tend to be laughed out of the room, and even fans of those personalities try to make sure everyone knows that they aren't one of those people. The fawn are often known to be rather egoistic and obviously very, very popular. We often see them, whenever they make a mistake, taking a long time, maybe even forever, to own up, and even if they do apologize, it's often under a formal, rigid, disingenuous context, such as Logan Paul's apologies, especially his first one. We also see that many, dare I say all of these personalities, make very simple, easily digestible content devoid of nuance. I think that this is because, for kids, the world needs to be, simple. And these people try to portray the world as simple, even though it's not, attracting these fawns like flies to the dung. I feel that the reasons can be really, well, complicated. I know I can't delve into the depth and complexity of that in a video of this length, but I want to just give a few reasons I think contribute to this. Keep in mind, not all of these reasons apply to everyone. Firstly, one can often feel like these personalities are your friends or filling some hole in your life, generally loneliness. Sometime back, a little before I started this channel, I was in one of these dark places. I was lonely since, due to various unfortunate circumstances, my friends weren't around and my family was mostly busy. So I reached out to the internet. I began to watch a lot of political content, constantly swinging from one side to the other like a pendulum. I realized I was just trying to avoid my loneliness by being absorbed in political discourse, and I was being manipulated and just agreeing to whatever my quote-unquote friends on the political side were saying. And it's not just me. I also think that this is because many personalities are becoming more and more disconnected from reality. This is being portrayed in their videos and other content, where oftentimes money seems to be portrayed as representative of someone's worth, while that's not actually true. As an example, look at the Logan Paul situation, the suicide forest. Of course, we see how detached he was from reality, where a dead body was just a prop for him, for his vlog. We see the same detachment in his fans, who rushed to defend him. A lot of us know that many of these kids should be being supervised. They should not be watching manipulative and or non-age appropriate content. This is a huge factor, causing many of these kids to be manipulated into becoming a fawn of some people. YouTube is not a babysitter. Often, these people tie these personalities to their view of themselves. Their personalities are their personality, so to speak. Haha, I just came up with that. As I said in a previous video, these people don't see your critique as a critique of the ideas presented in the video or the video itself. They see it as an attack on the person, and by extension, an attack on themselves. This is because their ideas and personalities have been so influenced by this person. An attack on the person is a direct attack on them, because if their idol is bad, what does that say about them? Also, as we saw earlier, many of these fawns are in echo chambers, a place devoid of conflicting opinions. Many of these, studies have shown, radicalize views. So, when you were talking with people who oppose your opinion, you mentioned that you'd basically just say, no, Xbox is better because, like, XYZ. So, do you think that you ever had, like, including on the internet, because you know how people are on the internet, so do you think that you might have did you ever have any knee-jerk reactions when you were talking to someone who fervently opposed your opinion or something?
I'm trying to think. See, the funny thing is, it might be because of the area, but when it came to my fanboyism, it seemed like I didn't get any backlash until I changed, until I wasn't an Apple fanboy anymore, or I wasn't an Xbox fanboy anymore, and I decided I wanted my computer. That is actually when I became like, I guess I was a PC elitist for a few months because I was just so happy about what I had. And that's the time, because everyone around here played on consoles. So that was about the time when everyone was like, no, and they started saying the old things that I would say, and I was like, oh my god, that was me. So no, while I was a fanboy, a true fanboy, I didn't receive much in the way of backlash, because it seems there were pretty much everyone felt the same way.
This is especially true in YouTube. If you make a new account, for example, and start watching some, for example, anti-feminist or conservative YouTuber, like Sargon of Akkad, you'll see that after a few autoplays, you'll be listening to someone like Richard Spencer, who's basically considered the leader of the alt-right. We need to be careful to stop ourselves from falling into this type of trap. We need to make sure we don't become fawns. I think that there are a few things we can do in order to be more open-minded and have a whole perspective. We should ensure we educate ourselves on both sides of any drama or argument, so we can just see the facts and judge for ourselves who or what we deem to be right. To do this, we should try to make sure that we watch or consume more varied content, even if YouTube doesn't want us to. So you were talking about getting out of fanboyism. So what factors do you think was your decision to stop being a fanboy, like purely based on your like yourself, or do you think something like helped you get out of it? Some people or some circumstances.
You don't realize you're a fanboy when you are, most of the time. I know there are some people who are so into it that they just straight up admit. But most of the time, most people don't actually realize that they are. They just have their pretty much hard opinions, and they won't let those go. What took me was a friend of mine took me over to his house and said, "Hey, I just built my computer. Would you like to see it?" And I was like, "Sure," because I had no quarrels with computers. I just knew that they weren't, better than my console. And when he showed me a video game that I played on my console, I think it was Splinter Cell, and he showed me, and it was like 1080p, 60 FPS. The game looked so much different that I was like, what the hell? And it kind of, like, I had to change my own mind. And it was interesting because it's not like one of those things where you sit there and you instantly think, oh my god, I'm a fanboy, I need to change. You just think, I want that because I care about this thing, and that has what I care about, which to me was graphics. So
Right.
the fact that they look so much different, that was the only thing that like really made me jump.
And an entertainer shouldn't be extremely important to you. You can be inspired by him or her, yes, but you must keep in mind they're a person capable of mistakes. If, at least in my opinion, if you find yourself in such a state, try to avoid his or her content for a few days and we'll see how it goes. So, I also wanted to talk to you about your experience as a YouTuber. So, given that you have, over 100,000 subscribers, did you, like, really have any fanboys on YouTube? Like, anyone who, either, like, for another YouTuber which you interacted with, or, like, for yourself?
Are you asking if there are BulletBarry fanboys?
Yes,
Yeah.
or of another YouTuber that you interacted
Sure.
with?
Yes, there are BulletBarry fanboys, and they're pretty funny. I found out the other day there's apparently a channel that just is solely based on reacting to all of my videos. And they're like,
Really?
they're just huge fan, and they talk about like how great my opinions are and stuff like that. So like I definitely have those people, and I'm scared of those people. There have been people who like me so much they go out and find my address. They find ways to contact me so they can talk to me because that's their like life dream. There was this kid who wrote a paper for his school, and it was solely on people who influenced his life, and it was on me. And he said that one of the parts in his essay was BulletBarry is practically my religion. So that totally exists, and it throws you off a little bit because you don't, as a YouTuber, at least I don't, walk around thinking I'm BulletBarry. I'm someone that people know. So when you hear something about like that about yourself, it's really not an awesome thing to hear. Most of the time. And then I also, when I was really small, I was about like 2K subscribers, and I learned about Rags, and I went into his Discord one day, and someone was talking about, have they talked to Rags once? No, it wasn't even that. Rags liked one of his tweets, and it was the greatest day of his life because they had done that. And I just was like, I never want this to be my subscriber base. Like, I just want them to realize that I'm a human being with ideas, and if they like those ideas, that's awesome. And if they don't, that's fine as well. But I just don't understand that whole, like, glorifying a human being mentality.
One of the best ways to get feedback on one's ideas is through conversation. Talk with people about your thoughts and feelings, and you'll become far less ignorant. You'll understand more and learn more. In fact, that's how humans are at the top now. Don't waste that potential. Keep in mind that you are under no obligation to help a fawn. They got into this themselves, and you aren't required to help them out. However, if you still want to, here are some things that I think are important to know and follow. When you're trying to unfawn someone, try to comment on their idol's content, not their values, at least at first. Be clear about that. I think that makes it a bit less personal, and with a little luck, we'll stop the fawn from immediately getting defensive and shutting off. Okay, so, why don't you tell me a little bit about maybe some interactions you've had with fanboys, like on the internet or in person? Maybe you've talked to other friends who you said were fanboys and things like that.
Yeah, I try to stay out of that as much as I can. And people ask me for advice. How do I convert my friend who's a fanboy? And the thing is, like, when it comes to fanboyism, like I was saying earlier, most of the time they don't realize that they're wrong. They don't realize that they've attached their devotion to a brand. And when you don't realize that you have a problem, it's harder to solve it. That's so you got to kind of let them just realize that they have the problem themselves, and it's not that big of a deal. I mean, yeah, it's mentally unhealthy to have that sort of devotion towards a company.
Also, heated conversations and fights won't make any progress. The fawn will probably just try to escalate the situation. It's your job to make sure this doesn't happen by civilly conversing and trying not to argue as an opposition, but rather as a neutral person considering both sides. This will make them feel less attacked and will probably allow the conversation to go more smoothly. Okay, so basically one thing I've like at least seen in some other fanboys is um because they are obviously like attached to the brand or YouTuber or whatever, then like if you're insulting the brand, like if you say, hey, this thing by X brand sucks or something, and a lot of the time they what do you call this? A lot of the time some of these people can feel like attacked because obviously if the brand or YouTuber like affected them so much, if the or brand is a bad thing or person, then obviously what does that say about them, right? So do you think you might have, you said that mostly since you were like quote unquote leader of your group, you basically you didn't really feel like attacked or anything because you were the one who's shutting the other ideas down, right?
Yes.
So, have you noticed this in like anyone else, for example?
Yes. That's actually fairly normal as well. And I did feel that. I did 100% feel that when I switched to PC. There would be times when people would talk about the Xbox or the iPhone or things like that. And that is such an interesting mentality as well. This idea, because again, they don't realize that they're most of the time that they're a fanboy. So when they like something, for some reason they project themselves in that thing, like it's a piece of them. So let's say I love my iPhone so much, and someone comes up to me and says the iPhone sucks. Well, they're implying that I made a stupid purchase, that I don't know anything about my product, and that I suck for making that decision, and I'm an idiot for making that decision. You tell them, what, the iPhone costs too much. You're stupid for purchasing a phone that costs too much and doesn't do enough for the price. And they freak out, because I don't, they associate themselves with this device, and it's strange that we do it, but there was actually I can't remember the study. If I find it, I'll send it to you though, because it might be helpful. But there was a study, that people, that part of the brain that felt as though they were being attacked lights up. I think it's the amygdala lights up when their brand, their favorite thing, or whatever they're fanboy of is insulted, because it's like physically harming them as well. It's strange.
You will not always succeed. You won't always be the straw to break the camel's back. However, every contribution helps, and it's important to understand that it will take time and persistence, not only from you, but from many people. I personally haven't played Final Fantasy, but I've heard some criticisms of the game, like about the voice acting and a few other things. So, like if you look at those criticisms, do you think that those criticisms are valid? One, and do you think and why do you, if you consider them valid, why do you still like
it so much? Is it not important to you, or what else?
I mean, criticism around the voice acting, I I don't see any voice acting problems. Like, I don't know what they are talking about. Like, it's just a beautiful game. Like, it doesn't have any problem with the voice acting, and if it did have a problem, that would be something. But I just, I probably never noticed the problems with the voice acting, but I don't think it has any problems with that.
Okay.
It's often easier to convince family members or friends rather than strangers, so don't get your hopes up in a conversation with a total rando. And remember, even a small convo helps.
I don't know. I think that when it comes to just that, I try to stay out of it as much as possible, but I do have some friends um, who are fanboys, and I still talk to, I don't know if you know him, NoobTube Gamer. I talk to him, and he's locked to some pretty strange ideas. So, and there's nothing you can do. Like, you can give them all the facts, you can give them all the data, and it doesn't matter. They will always come back with, well, I have my own data too, and there's a huge group of people who believe what I'm saying, so why should I listen to you? And yeah, that's why we have flat earthers, man. That's how it's got to be.
Yeah. So, to conclude, I want to let you know that fawns, in most cases, are reasonable people, except in that specific subject. Treat them like that, and be persistent if you want to help them.
So, how about like any other problems? Like, I don't know if you've heard any other criticisms of the thing.
Some criticism that I heard is the 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 so the game doesn't really run at 60 FPS, and that's what I heard the most, and that I can say they're right, because you need a pretty powerful machine to run that game, so they are right with that.
Okay. So, for you, do you consider that like not a big deal? Like in your when you're playing?
I mean, it depends, because sometimes it can be a big deal, mostly in speedrunning, because you know you kind of need everything perfect, because
Yeah.
that game, when you speedrun Final Fantasy 15, it's around 5 hours, and if the game doesn't if it has performance issues, like a low FPS, that's not a really big problem, but sometimes it can be like,
You'll get memed.
I don't know, it can just like be bad sometimes.
Yeah. All right.
But
Okay. Continue.
but if you play the game casually, the frame drops or FPS, it won't be a problem, because in when you play it casually, you will most likely move, like, you won't be that aggressive with the game, so you will not notice the FPS, so it won't be a problem. But if you play it aggressively, you will notice something.
Okay. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me and talk about your experience. It was interesting for me, and I hope it was fun for you. All right.
It's alright.
Okay. I'll see you later, Nick.
Alright, dude. See you later.
So, one more thing that I've heard from other people talking about their experiences being a fanboy is, like, obviously, like we said, they attach their personality to them, and they believe that they're, like, smart enough to know that, this is the correct option. So, one thing I was thinking about is some people have talked about how they escape from fanboys and being that, like, maybe they were, rather than actually in a debate or a conversation with someone who's on the opposing team, it's just observation. Like, rather than feeling attacked, all they're doing is just looking at the people who are talking about, for example, maybe going onto the PC Master Race subreddit or something like that, and just like understanding the culture, understanding what their actual arguments are, and things like that without actually feeling attacked by any specific person or anything, because they're just talking between themselves. So, what do you think about that? Do you think it's actually effective, or do you think like something else might be better?
There was this documentary I watched a little bit called Accidental Kindness, where this, he's a black musician, would make friends with members of the KKK. And after a few years of being their friend, they eventually, leaders, just people who were part of it, they would eventually just quit the KKK because they were no longer afraid of black people. They knew what they were like. They didn't have this idea in their head. And I think the same thing can be said for that, you know, and that's exactly what my channel is all about. If you don't like something, if you hate a certain mentality, but you don't know anything about it, go look it up, you know? I spent like 4 days just researching about flat Earth because I was curious, you know? Of course it's ridiculous, but maybe I'd like to know what they think and why they think the way they do, you know? It's more helpful to know more than to leave yourself ignorant. Always.
Yeah. So, actually, I saw a couple studies relating to that. It's something called outgroup bias and outgroup homogeneity, if I'm pronouncing that correct. But basically, the studies say that even if you're given arbitrary groups, like people tend to assume that people outside of their group are more similar and they're worse. Like, that's just something inbuilt in human psychology, and it makes it easier for us to, you know, comprehend our world. Like, for example, one study showed that basically white people found black people to look more similar and white people to look more different. And with black people, it was the opposite. So, like, that was, like, an interesting thing, and exposing yourself to that group can probably help, like, subside that bias, at least in the moment. So I think that might be connected to this whole thing.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense.
So, that's all I wanted to ask you. Thanks for coming, Barry.
Absolutely, yeah, anytime.
Alright, I'll see you later then.
Awesome.
Thanks everyone for watching. I found this topic very interesting, and this quote-unquote investigation was really fun. The full interviews will be in the description, so be sure to check those out if you're interested. I would like to thank NiceMovesBoy and BulletBarry for willing to be interviewed. Be sure to sub if you're liking this stuff, and etc.